let's talk about my voice. Or let's not and say we did. I liked singing from a young age, and I wasn't insecure about it. I sang in the choir for a short time in public school, and later, when I did my bar mitzvah haftorah, I was told I had a beautiful voice. You should be a cantor, my mom's friends would say. No thank you. At that point, I wasn't screaming like the damned howling in Hades, as my reputation later would have it. I would soon be singing cream songs and blues songs in a sort of tenor soprano, or if you prefer, a soprano castrato style. I was a fan of guys with a higher range, like Stevie Marriott in The Small Faces and Humble Pie. Humble Pie's Live at the Fillmore was a hugely influential record to me and most of my peers. I Don't Need No Doctor was a huge song to me, and you can hear its influence in my early singing with Rush. I would later often be compared to Robert Plant. While he certainly pushed me into higher registers, I think a comparison with Marriott would be more accurate. He had a soulful voice with a strong vibrato, but he rocked. Soon, John Anderson's mellifluous singing would affect me too. Yeah, he had a high range, but his voice wasn't scratchy or abrasive. It was beautiful, soulful, and emotive, not unlike a schoolboy chorister. I really wanted to sing like that. Another singer who impressed me was Roger Hodgson on the early Supertramp records. And I liked both Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell a lot. Through the years, there were, of course, many others. I was a huge fan of Bjork later in life. No one would think to make that connection. But there are certain words I sing in Rush in a very Bjork-like manner. But I'm not going to tell you which ones they are. You have to find them. I wasn't aiming for raspiness. I just responded intuitively. Where my voice went was out of necessity, relating to what we were writing and the key we were writing it in. And when we were young, we weren't very savvy about keys. If the key we wrote a song in felt right musically, then I'd just have to make do as the singer. What we came to learn was that in certain lower registers, my voice lacked power. But when I booted up an octave, there was the power. Watching the movie Coda recently, I was struck by the scene in which the choir teacher tries to bring out his students' inner frustrations, coaxing her to sing from the gut. She's the only hearing member of a deaf family. Even if it's an ugly song, an ugly sound, he says, it will feel good. Turn your angst into power. And it dawned on me that my earliest vocal style may also have been rooted in my childhood. Listening to the stories of what my parents had endured in the concentration camps and suffering all that bullying and alienation, so that when I began to sing, it all came rushing out like a screaming banshee. I was releasing all those suppressed emotions just by stepping up to the mic and screaming, "Yeah! Ah! Of course, then I had to learn how to actually sing. John Griffin once wrote in the Montreal Gazette that I sounded like a guinea pig with an amphetamine habit. In Circus, Dan Nuger said, if Lee's voice were any higher and raspier, his audience would consist exclusively of dogs and extraterrestrials. Kind of like that. And in 1979, perhaps kindlier, John Rockwell would comment in the New York Times, Mr. Lee sings in a spare but unusual way, a brittle and androgynous tenor. Okay. So yes, my style did come across to some as quite abrasive, especially before we began making records. But you have to put yourself back in 1974. It's all context, right? Here in 2023, our collective ears have become much more open. We've heard every style of music, every kind of singer. Bands way heavier than Rush, vocalists even shriekier than I used to be. So imagine that you're a critic back then, sitting in a reverberant arena. There's this three-piece band you don't know, and this hairy guy is shouting at you. I get that if you consider yourself more sophisticated but the average music fan, that our 26 minutes on stage must have seemed a bit of a loud mess, but we were truly into it, playing our parts with honest conviction, and raw or not, we were connecting with a growing number of people. I guess sometimes the official tastemakers are the last to know. Each Rush album gave me another opportunity to improve as a player and a songwriter, but especially as a singer. It likely became so important to me because of all the heat I took for my voice over the years. But sometimes my attitude was like, hey, don't like the way I sing? Well, then I politely invite you to fuck the fuck off and move on to something more suitable for your sensitive taste. But most often, to meet my own standards if no one else's, I worked at it, and I worked hard at it. Then there's singing when you have a cold. There's really nothing worse than going out on stage in that condition, becoming hoarse, singing badly, unable to hit the notes, and I did it far too many times. That's a special kind of torture. With our "the show must go on" attitude, we always resisted canceling unless it was absolutely unavoidable. And I went on stage with tonsillitis, croup coughs, and even a bloody nose, swallowing blood. And with this nose, that's a lot of blood. I'd be feeding a spittoon throughout the show. And when I was sick, my bass tech Scully would also keep a shit ton of Kleenex and a wastebasket at the side of the stage and run out between songs with tea, lemon, and honey. One time, my ears became so congested that my trusty ENT doctor in Toronto had to puncture one of my eardrums to drain the fluid out, simply so I could fly to the next gig. When flying on tour, you see, during decompression at altitude, the fluid in your sinus cavities can become excruciatingly painful and leave you partially deaf for days, and that's a whole lot of fun. So I screamed blue murder when he inserted that needle. And then, leaving his office, I noticed a young kid in the waiting room, pale as a ghost, staring at me in horror. And I said with a wink, "You're up, kid." Thank you.